Ladies and gentlemen, a religious experience around my first drink of the convention. Oh,
Put things up there as we hold them up. Yes. So some of our artifacts are quite small. If you want to come up and see them more closely, please be courteous of the people behind you.
Yes.
we have gorgeous assistants to take them around.
We will also attempt to describe them to you, so you can get a flavour of what they are. Well, we're 2 hours, 2 minutes, any latecomers. Near latecomers are welcome.
What about recently?
I don't know, you have to ask the time travel panel about that.
Yeah, they're fine.
There is a time travel panel, apparently you're recommending to arrive early. That's your wisdom, in which case you know.
So what is it? Is it ration because it's rash to eat it? Or it's got cheese in it? Oh.
There are things to look at.
Cheese.
Move forward if there are.
Cheese is milk, it's gone off and then gone off again.
If you want to see much better, there are a couple of seats at the front here.
Oh.
There will be things to look at, so not me.
Yeah, go ahead. Perfect.
But this is a very sensitive microphone. It's a very
They're great.
buzzy.
Microphoning at this convention, AV generating is great. Everything works. Definitely not what you can do. Still a couple of seats at the front here if anybody wants. You don't have to stand at the back, you can sit near the front, see things.
Maybe they feel safer back.
We don't believe any of the artifacts here pose any hazard to sentient life.
Well, that's disappointing.
After all, you never can be sure.
Yes.
Right.
It's a check so that I know what
Right, let's get started. So, this is the Alien Artifacts panel, our annual summary of the latest discoveries in Xenoarcheology. Archaeology being the science of things used, etc., by sentient beings, otherwise it would be xenopaleontology. So, we have a panel of experts here who will discuss some of the latest discoveries. We even have some things which we have not yet fully analysed, and we would like your contributions later to help us identify these items. I am Nicolal. I am your moderator. In real life, I do computer systems for a very large travel company. But here, I am cosplaying a feral van driver.
I'm Sharon Sheffield. My pronouns are she, her. I have degrees in linguistics and anthropology from way too long ago. In my day job, I'm an ordained clergy person, so it's all anthropology.
My name is Melissa Kocias. It rhymes with supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. In my free time, I like to volunteer with or run fan conventions, and for my job, I run conventions. So this is a bit of a busman's holiday, and I am very keen on archaeology, and especially of the xenotype. It provides so many opportunities for travel.
Yes, sorry. May I just say, we do have some more seats at the front. We especially have some seats reserved for any accessibility requirements, which include vision, and there are things to look at here. But otherwise, if you're standing at the back, feel free to sit near the front. You don't have to stand. Apparently.
I've forgotten who I am. I'm David Wake. I'm a science fiction writer, so I use all the pronouns. And I have a time machine in my front room.
Oh.
It would be indeed a TARDIS, a full-size TARDIS. All of it. Since the don't look having a full-size TARDIS doesn't have all of it.
That's a whole other panel.
You know, a 9-foot construction with a very small door is hopeless.
So let's proceed to the latest discoveries and artifacts. And first of all, I'd like to invite Sharon, who has a particularly fascinating item to present to us.
I promise you that maybe one of you will ever have seen these things before. This, if you can see it from there, notice.
Walk it back to the back and forward again.
All right. Well, I don't have an artifact in my hands. Notice the unique spiraling around the stem. Notice the delicate but gentle curve with a nasty point on the end of it. This, my friends, is an Andorian antennae earwax remover. I've only ever seen one in my 37 years of anthropology. I can't tell you how I got it, then I'd have to kill you, but enterprise. Also note that the spiral is very important. This is a right-handed antennae earwax remover. If it were going the other way, it would be a left-handed antennae earwax remover, and I've never seen one of those, so maybe all the Andorians go like this.
That's very similar to this object that I have, which was discovered in the Temple of the Lost Civilization of Green. This is an embalming hook. You see, they don't want to go into the afterlife looking ahead. So they pull out the eyes while they are performing the embalming, and then they place them in their final resting places. And it is slightly soft, so it can sort of get into those round spaces behind the ocular region.
Well, those certainly are very peculiar things. If anybody has just arrived and would like to sit down, do come down and sit down at the front. Meanwhile, I have here a very unusual device. It is in fact a device. It comes from the planet Zeta Capricorn 5, where we have been excavating for the past 2 years. It was massively damaged by a nova about 500,000 years ago.
You're having me carry it? Stuff it!
Yes. Which destroyed most structures and artifacts. We did find some deeply buried artifacts. It seems they had some sort of bunkers or castles or something that were not quite so affected by the nova. So the civilization was really very advanced. These stones that the castle was made of show signs of rearrangement on the atomic scale, so they managed to rearrange individual atoms, technology that even we don't quite have. But it was clearly a very martial culture, because we have signs of ritual combat everywhere, ritual combat instruments, paintings, etc., etc. Now, the intelligent species of civilization had two eye tentacles at the top of their head, and if they were actually fighting, they wore a helmet that covered this. But they also practiced a lot of dueling, which it was very advanced science, but they practiced a lot of dueling. For dueling, we have images that show that the eye stalks were extended and vulnerable to being cut off by a sword or some other weapon. We also have pictures that show some of these people who were missing one eye stalk were ostracized in society. It's very polite to have a missing eye stalk. So, some of the high status members of the species would have a prosthetic eye stalk for use in polite society. And this shows signs of having been highly decorated, where the heat of the nova has carbonized it entirely, apart from this decorative metal bag, which we have analysed and discovered that this is made of palladium. So, only 2 of these have been found, the other one of which was broken, so we're very pleased to have found this. Meanwhile,
Can I disagree with you on that one, or shall I?
if you have alternative hypotheses, do present it.
Well, pass the object over to him, please.
There you are.
This This was clearly found in the region of Norway. It is a baby Cthulhu mask. These gaps that you see here are for the facial tentacles to grip on properly, and the cross-shaped eye viewing area. So this is a Cthulhu baby's mask.
Well, I shall have to ask my graduate students where exactly they sourced this from and present your hypothesis to them, because we're trying to publish a paper on this next year. We may have to revise our conclusions.
Are your research students going mad?
Yes, but that's to be expected of you. Meanwhile, Dave.
Oh yes, this is also an earwax remover. That clearly isn't made of metal and ridiculous. This is a sort of slightly rubbery texture to it. And this is found for cleaning out your ears if you are a user of babelfish. Obviously, babelfish take in the brainwave matrix and translate for you, and they feed off your brainwave patterns. But if you have earwax in your ears, they will start to eat the earwax. This will, of course, have fermented and will drive the babelfish slightly bonkers. So you will start to hear voices, which you assume are coming from people who are not in the room. So it is vitally important to clean out your earwax before you use a babelfish.
And all I can say in response to my learned colleague is that he obviously has no idea of the difference between an ear and an antenna. A soft squishy thing is not going down an antenna.
But do you think that this has caused a widespread use of the babelfish? Because as we know, the babelfish is now nearly extinct. So do you think this has in fact contributed to species extinction by making it easier to use the babelfish?
Well, no, I mean, it helps the babelfish if they have pure brainwaves to feed off, rather than earwax. So live off earwax. This is why this thing has been invented. Because too many babelfish have been dying from bad earwax.
Oh, right. Oh, I see. So this isn't actually part of the problem, it's part of the solution.
Part of the solution.
Oh, I see. Okay. I didn't realise you were also a specialist in babelfish conservation. I'm sorry.
I've lost the object, but I was going to point out that we have a brush on the other end for getting the earwax that has fallen out.
Oh, right.
Back to my shoulder.
I see. Right.
And
Oh, sorry. Carry on.
I was just wondering where on Earth in the universe you're finding pure brainwaves.
That's why the babelfish are going extinct.
Point.
Right. Okay. So it's generalised
Starvation.
Generalised environmental degradation. I see. We should clearly encourage more of the pure philosophy students to create the pure brainwaves in you. Very good. Melissa.
I have a very special item. You are going to be so amazed. This has not been seen in millennia. We have this lovely metal stand to hold this beautiful object. You see, floating in the mysterious clear liquid are little spheres, also with different colors of mysterious liquid. And this is a lunar orrery from the planet in the dual solar system of Aldron. And this helps you to say where each moon is at any one time. And it's very useful for crops, for taking ocean voyages, because heaven forbid you want to try to take a voyage when at least 3 of the moons are directly pulling the waves and making it very tumultuous. Or if you are a xenoarcheologist.
So, There is the alternative hypothesis proposed by Dr. Frankenstein. It is, I agree, slightly controversial, that these are in fact actually for measuring ancestry relationships amongst cousins. That there are not relationships between inappropriate clans. So, what do you say to his hypothesis?
Well, I would say, explain yourself, please.
He has produced 5 books and 57 papers on this topic.
Well, I am not a xenobiologist or geneticist.
Right. It may indeed be that he is working from current data, not older data.
I'm wondering though, if this is actually a kinship tallier, why aren't the complementary colors closer to each other? It would seem to be counterintuitive if you're going to have the yellow and the red so far apart, and the blue and the green so far apart. If you're going to be measuring consanguinity, shouldn't the colors also align?
Well, the idea here is that the species that use it have eyes with different spectral response.
I see.
Well, yes, I think that's the point. Well, then why do we see?
Well, we have to observe things as they do and not as we ourselves do. But it's a very good point. Have you done any spectral analysis of the spectra from each item in there?
Yes, I have. And it seems that the colors in this match up with the colors appearing on the respective moons in that system.
Ah. You should contact Dr. Frankenstein about this. I'm sure his reaction will be most amusing.
Indeed. I look forward to our debate.
So then your next paper is.
You should give the credit for that.
Oh, big glass. I have, get them out, two Kara towers. And these are used on a world, calls itself the Boulder world because they live within a rounded crater, massive rounded crater of an asteroid collision yonks ago. It's not terribly important. These are Kara towers and they're used for a game. They're placed around in a circle, you have a lot more of these, and stones are dropped into the little holes and gathered around, and then you choose a Kara tower to turn over, and you take the stones out and then you cast them around, or clockwise, well, sunwise or with it. So they are Kara towers for a game in the bowl of the world.
Are you sure they're not just broken jars?
Well, they were manufactured in broken jars, clearly. But what they have to make do, because it's a fantasy world, so they have not advanced technology for 3D printing or anything like that. So they do use broken jars for the task.
I see, so sort of a reuse.
Yes.
Deliberate game recycling program.
Well, they are quite delicate, so I can definitely see how they might break rather easily.
Somebody drop in a rock and see if it works.
If they were actually game pieces, I might expect them to have a kind of tonal resonance, as is usual in that culture. Sort of these don't quite have it. Are you sure these are real game pieces, or are they perhaps ones that somebody in the culture faked up and they're not the true item?
No, they're not faked up by the culture, they're faked up by the museum. The genuine article, these were manufactured for museums with display cases. They were kept behind a glass case, so you weren't allowed to go and flick them.
Right.
So no one knew.
I see. Okay. So, one of my graduate students recently returned from a holiday where they obtained this artifact. Its provenance is slightly uncertain because it came from one of those souvenir shops where the owner looks like they don't like to tell you where their sources are. And I am wondering if any member of the panel can identify this item.
I would say that this looks like the key to the Grand Temple on Saturn V. You see how there's the grip here to get into the keyhole, and then the switch in order to pull and turn at the same time. This is a very nice specimen.
No, I don't think you're right, because see how this also rotates around that way, as well as this way. I think this is an Oryx dehorner.
The oryxes of which planet?
Blessed if I know. Wait, here it says rotten Barber. So this is obviously the distressed civilization on the planet Barg. And it must be from the swamp Oryx if it's rotten.
I see.
What do you think, David?
Thanks very
I don't think you want anything to do with it.
Actually,
Do you want it back now?
the thing is, that you think you've identified it, but we do have other specialists in the audience here. Would any specialist like to come and identify this item for us? There's a person back there, standing up.
There's
Yes.
a handheld mic.
Yes. Could you please consult the technology expert back there who will give you a microphone so we can all hear you? Thank you.
Yeah, this is a very
Do you wish to come up here and identify more, examine it more closely? Right, thank you.
Yeah, this is an item I use very regularly. I'm a racer of Earth and Major Space Weasels. This is a starting gate.
Ah,
So, yeah,
How's
it's
it-
a
how's it
Racing Weasel starting
gate
gate.
for Space Weasel racing.
where does the weasel go?
It's in there, and then it releases, and they go scuttling off.
Oh, I see. Oh, is this part of it and it was broken off or something?
Yeah, there's usually a decorated mount in all of the routine colours of your Space Weasels.
Right.
It's very good betting, you can make a lot of money.
I see. Well, thank you very much for that.
Can we pass it over here, please? I don't think anybody's like this. Yes, I know exactly what this is. This is from the future, as we said back in the past. And it's from an IKEA jump drive system. When you've constructed your jump drive, this is the bit that's always left over. It's a complete unknown.
Okay, so it's either a jump drive or a weasel starting gate. Good to know. Well, I shall pass these information back to my graduate student and suggest that they
Build a time
revise their research paper. Right. Does anybody have any other artifacts?
He does.
I have two more. I wish to make a point. This is a ceremonial hand used by priests if they wish to make a point of order in their doctrine. And it has two purposes. One is to wave to the air and go, I have a point of order. Although only one person can do it at a time, because as I said, this is a unique item. There's anything like it anywhere else. But they can also use it for tracing along the line when they're reading out their religious text. Unique item, a hand of gold.
The biggest guy I've ever seen.
This also reminds me of the prosthetics that are used by the squid population of Euronymous 4. when they are interacting with humans, they obviously don't want to insult us with a weird gesture or something like that. They're very sensitive people. And this would go right over the end of the tentacle, and then they could point to things and make gestures or say, I have an idea.
So I'm not sure about that at all, because I do agree that it's pointing, but I'm afraid that, and I've made some study of ritual combat, that it is actually for the same species with squid-like tentacles, but in fact it is used for attack. And this one, as we can see, is not very sharp, so it's probably used for either practice or ritual combat, or even possibly used for religious purposes. Whereas if it was an actual implement of warfare or hunting, it would be more pointed, because a tentacle's, it's very dexterous, but it's not great for stabbing. So they cover the end of their tentacle with this additional stabbing implement.
David did say it was very old, right?
Yes, very old.
It could have been dulled.
Could. Let's examine it more closely. I mean, look, it shows signs of recent use, even if it is dull. So possibly it is actually a former combat instrument now used for practice.
I'm afraid I'm not an expert in this particular culture, but I do say it's really interesting to see some early digital technology.
It looks like we have a couple of hands in the audience who might be...
Yes, do you have an explanation for it? Would you like to step up, examine the artifact more closely and use this microphone, please?
Well, I don't need to. This happens to be the subject of my PhD, admittedly completed some years ago. I must salute you as lay people, able to recognize that this is indeed a ceremonial artifact from the long-fallen civilization of the planet Watset 7. The planet Watset 7 has tragically been so afflicted by climate change that its inhabitants have been reduced to a shell of their former civilizations and can only, may I have this please, create inert ceremonial replicas of some of their great voyaging and live specimen capture tradition which they carried out on planet Earth. So what we really have here is the last remnant of a proud culture of alien abduction, anal probing. Wonderful specimen. Very glad to know that the no longer pointed, the originals, but never be certain. I would suggest biological testing of the surface. Just because they're really, the rituals that they're carrying out right now are absolutely fascinating. We're still not quite sure how they're appropriating that proud ancestral knowledge. So.
Thank you very much for that. I feel like this is one of the great things about this colloquium of experts that we have gathered here. Please do use the portable microphone so that everybody can hear you.
While this position is of course important, this is in fact a Yellow Lantern's ring stand. The position it is held in here, as all of you are aware, the Yellow Lanterns derive a lot of their power from fear. And a lot of people have fear of something like that going on.
I see. That's also another explanation. Right.
Shall I go on?
Sharon has a very small item here, which I shall walk around so people can see it more closely.
Small and delicate, but absolutely fascinating in history. If you remember Gulliver going to Lilliput, well, he was in the advanced stage of Lilliputian society, and this is from their very early time, when they could barely manage the heating sources to cook, and so everything was cooked in large pots, and it was boiled, and it was basically stewed into irreducibility. And so that is a combination fork and straw. If you take a look at it, you can see that it is forked on the end, and they could stab any basic bits of meat or vegetable that still remained and then slip up the rest through the straw.
Could I take a look at that? I've seen something like this before. It does seem like a miniature version of what the Arcelians use for arranging flowers. They set this on the table and then they stick their little flowers in there. Huh. But obviously it's much bigger.
It's a gasket for a warp drive. You buy them in packs of 500. There's nothing special about it at all. I finished.
I don't think so. There's no place to put the crystal in it.
Well, exactly. The warp drive gasket usually has a hexagonal prismatic hole where the dilithium crystal goes. And this doesn't quite look like that, unless you're suggesting that there is in fact a radically different design of warp drive that we don't yet know about.
Well, the Romulans use a singularity, and that has to go around hole.
Oh, right. So you're saying this is in fact a Romulan. So, how are Romulan parts arriving here? I'm a smuggler, sir.
Couldn't say. No. It's Amelia.
You'll have to justify the provenance of that before you process in the museum. You can't be having untraced artifacts traveling around. Can you identify this?
It is.
Please step up. Or would you like to bring the microphone?
Okay.
I'm fine. I'm fine. I just want to say,
Just hold on.
yes, this is an artifact from the extinct Rigelian civilization, and we know it was some sort of weapon. We don't know exactly how it worked, but we know that it was mightier than the sword.
It looks like we had a hand over here as well.
Do you also have an identification tool?
Yes, as I suspected, of a kind of a traditional and what's the word I'm looking for, like formal occasions headdress of Amaratu monarchy. So the reason it has a tiny pin on the end, you see, is it's for models. So the children of Amaratu monarchy would have little, like full dioramas of the vast palaces and huge sweeping grounds. And so they would have little rows of soldiers, and this is one of their ceremonial hats. We're going to replica.
I see. Well, thank you very much. I have an additional artifact here, which I found in my own research 2 or 3 years ago, but I've only got around to examining it in detail. And on the first hand, it appears to be a small portable altar of the type found on Beta Regulus. Now, if you go to Beta Regulus and you ask the Regulans about this, they won't tell you very much about their religion. They're very secretive about it, and there are many things we don't quite know about their religion yet. And if you see one, you'll find that you can't get hold of it. It will disappear somehow before you could possibly get hold of it. Unless the entire family clan that owns it has died out, in which case it becomes totally unimportant. So you see, you can obtain them legitimately, but very, very rarely. But that's not the interesting bit about this, because these altars are quite well known. It's mostly what the altar is actually made of, because it is made of the fossilized hand bones from the much older civilization of Alpha Regulus, which died out several million years before the Beta Regulans achieved space travel. And this has been credited to one of the early spacefaring families of Beta Regulus, who obtained it from somewhere. The controversy is, it's not clear that at that time, the beta regulans had the ability to reach alpha regulars, land on the surface, and retrieve artifacts there, most of which were destroyed by very extensive volcanism. So there are very few of them to be found, even with modern space travel. But this means that either some family in beta regulars had much better space travel than anyone else on regulars and didn't tell anybody about it, or this thing arrived by means that are, in fact, completely unknown. That's our current working hypothesis. I only identified it as an altar. My colleague Dr. Wood was the one who identified the very ancient origin of the support pieces.
I think the sort of shells in this design give away what it is used for. This is a pool cue holder, which is you place it on the table. It sinks into the water slightly, and then you use it's pool played on Nigel 5, and then you can use it to knock the sort of ping pong balls that are used there around the pool table.
How old are those artifacts typically, the pool cue holders?
Not very old at all, because obviously they use real water in their pool tables. Things tend to rot.
Right, because I've strontium 90 dated this to approximately 2.5 million years old.
You may have done, yes.
Well, let's discuss this later.
I think you're both wrong. This seems that it is a shrine to a dearly departed pet. As you can see the effigy of this pet, which looks like some sort of winged lizard, and you would have, I'll put it there for people to see, you would have your ceremonial offerings that you would put into the bowl, perhaps some of the pet's favorite food, or some water, or maybe even a scale from this beloved animal.
So, where do you think it comes from then? Where do people have these shrines to their pets of that exact shape?
Well, not specifically in that exact shape, but that's why I think it is unique to some family that lost their little scaly member of their family and wanted to honor it. And I have seen similar monuments or altars in the homes of the people on Siberius 4.
I grieve for the state of my colleagues learning you're all ignoring this particular cutout in the base of it. You're also all putting the dish on upside down. If you look at it this way, you can see that in fact it's a wonderful fire starter. You just catch the sun's rays, or whatever planetary equivalent is, in the dome, and it comes down, and it lights your fire source here in the middle, and the poor little critter on the side just got fried.
So it must have been serious, because only very white light could be focused by that lens.
That could in fact be the case.
And if it went slightly to the side, then that would be pretty dangerous for any creature coming nearby. Right, okay, I think we've solved that one then. Right. Do you have an alternative explanation?
Yes.
Oh, please do come.
You are looking at it.
No, please use the microphone to speak. Thank you.
You are looking at it the incorrect way. It is a table. It is a table, and this is the bowl for the table.
Well, if I place the bowl on the table, then it isn't very stable. So what kind of thing would I eat from this?
I don't know.
More research required.
But
We have another counterpoint over.
Do we have another contribution? Yeah.
Is there another way we can look at it wrongly?
Actually, I will partially corroborate my esteemed colleague's conclusion. The problem is that these are actually two separate artifacts that have been combined. While the stand is composed of the hand bone, sorry, I memorized what you said, but then I forgot it, but I got up here. But
it was the civilization of Alpha Regulus 5.
Alpha Regulus 5, yes. Alpha Regulus 5, of course, we know, has a long-standing history of being at war with the Glenorians. And the Glenorians would collect these hand bones and create these stands, and then they would manufacture their own bowls to put on top of it. The Glenorians, of course, they would use this as a ritual cleansing dish. Because it was an insult to their fallen enemy. The Glenorians, we know, are a monotesticular race.
I see. Do you have more to add to this topic?
Yes, please.
Oh, please do.
Thank you. Just wanted to explain that this artifact is coming from a modular biological species. They can just disjoin their bodies at will. So these are made by the antlers. The antlers come off easily, but they do keep growing out of your body, so they have to be trimmed off occasionally. Now, the species, very interesting part of the life cycle is the problem with sleep, because they only contain one eyeball. And the only way for them to fall asleep is to remove the eyeball and place on the dish. And when they wake up, they just pop it back in and they see clearly and they're aware. Thank you.
Would you mind passing it over here? I don't need the glass helmet that is used by people to protect themselves from small asteroids. But this is merely a display stand for a earwax remover.
Syncretism within this symposium. So, I also have an artifact which none of our panelists have yet been able to identify, where recent inspiration may have struck. But I would also invite anybody in the audience who can help us identify this item. I'll walk it around slightly, and people can think for 30 seconds or so.
Is it safe?
Then I will invite people to explain it if they can.
This is a science panel. Is anything safe?
Just maybe don't lick it.
One of my graduate students did lick it and said that it is not bone. If it is bone, it is very heavily fossilized. So, would you like to come up and explain this item to us?
It's really frightening, isn't it?
It's unsettling in a number of ways, but yes.
Thank you. Dr. Sheffield is absolutely right. This is a figure of terror. On the planet of Ethelred, the culture there live in fear of a local life form that's considered to be a destroying god. And they make these effigies of the god to be used in propitiatory rituals. Essentially, the idea is that they use this representation of God along with a representation usually of their settlement and ceremonially destroy the settlement with the effigy, which then means that the god itself, it is believed, will not then destroy anything that's already been slain. So you can see, as Dr. Plum has pointed out, the terrible horn, which it's actually how the life cycle of this being hasn't been studied much, but it's believed that it uses this horn to essentially impale prey to be taken home to its young. So some of the, obviously because of the purpose of the ritual, this one is presented as if it's just arriving, but you will also see some depictions of this deity where it's returning home after its rampages, where it will be shown with, sometimes even there's a very interesting artistic tradition in some parts of this planet where they show their defeated enemies impaled on the horn. Although that's obviously from a very different ritual tradition where that's seen as invoking this work rather than warding it off by making it have already happened. Thank you.
I have one question for him though. You said
microphone, please. Use the microphone.
That's her.
Sorry. You said the planet is called Ectonet, right?
Yes.
That is delete backwards.
Coincidences happen.
Does that mean that this is actually the god of deleting things? It could be.
I feel I must take issue with this because you're portraying this as an avenging god, but it could instead be a protective deity.
That's not something that I've seen in my research. So I think I've essentially summarised my points, but I'm happy to hand over to your expertise.
It seems menacing in some ways, but in other ways, sort of overweeningly protective. So, how can we tell if it's a guardian deity or a vengeful deity, as it were?
So we're into comparative theology at this point. I would say I think we have to consider the context of the ritual purposes. So I would expect to see a protective deity depicted in between the thing to be protected and some other threat. Whereas according to my research, I've only ever seen this deity represented in otherwise idyllic settings, which suggests that there's no other threat present. So I can only assume that with this fearsome weapon, there's nothing there for it to be protected from. So I have to assume that this being is threatening to destroy the pleasant little villages and happy streams and nice wooden glades in which it's usually depicted.
Ah, okay.
I must object.
And I'll object after you.
This comes from Galais 375b. And some people say it comes from Galais 375c, they're idiots. On that poem, I have a terrible problem with wasps and bees. So this has been constructed in order to be a scarecrow, effectively, or a scared bee to send them away. As you know, bees and wasps see things in ultraviolet, and you obviously can't see that, but in ultraviolet, this looks quite garish. That's scary.
I realized that the trouble I had identifying this was in fact the color. I'm pretty sure that everyone in their undergraduate studies heard of the marron comedor de personas with the single eye and the horn flying over the world, eating the inhabitants. This is of course a rosada comedor de personas rather than a marron comedor de personas. And so the pink really threw me off, but can't you just see? But it's obviously clumsily executed. Perhaps it's a larval form where there are two eyes rather than they haven't yet gone into the one in the center of the form.
One-eyed, one-horned, pink, purple people.
Do you have additional information for us? Please step forward and use the microphone.
Well, how about we take the microphone back?
Oh, sorry, would you like the microphone brought to you?
I'm halfway here now.
I'm sorry, I should have asked.
This is obviously a weapon used by the young of Lotharia. It spews glitter from the extremities. Glitter that coats everything in which it comes in contact and multiplies. The young of Lotharia used this to destroy their neighboring planet of Grimdark. by blinding the inhabitants thereof.
So this is actually extremely dangerous.
Extremely dangerous.
Well, thank you for warning us about this. I will have it placed in containment as soon as this panel is over. Thank you very much. Do you have additional suggestions? Ah, okay, right.
I have another item, if that's all right.
Yes, please carry on with any further items that we may have.
This item is absolutely unique. It's used by the priests of Gaumont when they're taking out their ceremonial lamps, because they're supposed to hold them in their actual hands, but if you're holding a lamp in your actual hand, it can get very, very hot. So they cheat and have one of these in their robes to hold their lamps, so they don't burn themselves. As I said, an absolutely unique item.
So, well, carry on, but I'm not convinced about that explanation.
I think you can also use it for squishing heads.
So, I think you're right about the lamp holding function, but it's clearly used for religious purposes. Because only in the temples would they hold a lamp like this. Elsewhere, they tend to hold them slightly sideways, but holding it upright is a sign of the appeal to the powers above. Yes, but it's very important that it's only used in a temple. In fact, to see this object outside the temple is extremely rare.
Well, that's why the item is unique.
Oh, right, yes. You've managed to remove it from the temple.
Do you mind if I try something?
Ritual object.
You can ritually defeat the monster that's attacking the village.
It's very handy.
I see. Well, that's a truly deep religious insight we have there. Right. Do we have any additional artifacts to discuss?
I have a napkin holder from
Say
852.
again?
A napkin holder. Well, they have a terrible problem on that planet of napkins disappearing for no very good reason.
Now, this is a ceremonial mask. Obviously, my head is too big for it, but you see, it would go on like so, and it would stand for the ritualized, I can't think of the word. Well, I'll let you go while I think of that, because apparently
So, I do agree.
that terrifying thing has just...
Well, I do agree it's a ceremonial mask, but Dave is trying to trick us a little here, because we already discussed how one of those was a ceremonial weapon.
Which one of these unique items you're talking about?
The more pointing one.
Oh, the pointing one.
Which is clearly used for ceremonial and training purposes by a species with tentacles. But this, you see, is the ceremonial mask and headgear that they fit on top of the centre of their body while doing so. So these together, in fact, form a cephalopod dueling equipment. I'm sorry, would you like the microphone or would you like to come out?
I'm just saying,
Well,
I'm just saying that once you acknowledge the correct hypothesis of the ceremonial anal probe, the function of the ring becomes fairly obvious.
Do you really know sanitizer?
that's true, but we didn't 18 rates time. I think we've covered all the recent discoveries in xenoarchaeology. Thank thank you all for attending, and thank you very much for the many experts in the audience that have provided additional information. And please do remember to collaborate and cite all your co-researchers in all the papers you'll be published as a result. Thank you very much for coming.
You see,